Welcome back, guys, to Imagine If. I'm your host, as always, The Butler. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the top 5 serial killers that were never caught. Before we jumped into things, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to my channel. Also, if you get any enjoyment out of watching my videos, please like and subscribe now to get the latest videos the moment I post. Without any further ado, let's jump into the action. First on the list, Jack the Ripper. Now, we call him Jack the Ripper, but we really don't know who was the person behind one of the older and most notorious murder sprees ever in history. The killer appeared in London's Whitechapel district in 1888 and murdered 5 women, all prostitutes. The police suspected the killer was some type of surgeon or butcher or someone very skilled with a scalpel. The killer mocked the community and the police by sending letters outlining the acts he was or she was doing. Although many suspects have been named over the years, the killer have never been identified. Next on the list, Redhead Murderer, or the Bible Belt Strangler. Now, this happened in a few different states: Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. These murders took place between 1978 until 1992, and it is estimated that it was between 6 and 11 victims. The murders were a string of killings committed along the Bible Belt in the United States in the 1980s. All of the victims, many whom were never identified, had red or reddish type of hair. Many of their bodies were dumped on major highways in the United States, leading investigators to believe that the victims were engaged in either hitchhiking or some type of sex work. The first murder linked to the killer occurred in 1983 near Littleton, West Virginia. An older couple stumbled upon the body while walking around the area's highways. Investigators were unable to identify the woman and furthermore could not pin down the suspect. More victims, many sporting a red hair type of look, began to spring up in the neighborhood states throughout the 80s. The last known victim was Elizabeth Lamont, whose body was found in 1985 in Greenville, Tennessee, with the evidence of a stab wound and a severe blunt force trauma to the head. Out of all the victims, only 4 have been identified. Police interviewed 2 suspects in connections with the murders, but the true identity of the killer was never discovered. Number 3 on the list, the Freeway Phantom. Location: Washington, D.C. Now, this spree was kind of short-lived compared to all the other ones on the list today. It took place between 1971 and 1972. Although the spree only lasted about a year or so, there were 6 victims. In 1971, a killer began hunting the northeast neighborhood of Washington, D.C. 6 young black girls between the ages of 10 and 18 were brutally murdered within a year and a half of each other. Victims were abducted while walking to the store, out for a jog, to school, their job, and even their home. The killer would rape and strangle each victim before dumping their bodies along the highway. Now, the second to the last victim was found with a note. It read, "This is a tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit to the others when you catch me, if you can." Signed, the Freeway Phantom. Police suspected an area gang in the string of the attacks, yet no convictions were ever made. Unfortunately, since then, the case files have been lost, making it solving the crime nearly impossible. Number 4 on the list, the Colonial Parkway Killer. Location: Virginia State. These strings of murders took place between 1986 and 1989, with an estimate of 8 victims. In the late 1800s, Virginian couples were targeted and attacked by a killer along the Colonial Parkway. 3 couples were found dead, and the 4th couple's bodies were never discovered, although their car had some things of personal belongings such as wallet and clothing. To this day, the 4th couple is presumed dead. The 3 couples and all 4 were found along the Colonial Parkway, usually only a few days after they went missing. And strangely, in all the cases, there were no signs of attempted robbery or sexual assault. A few theories about the killer have been proposed, including that the perpetrator was an actual police officer, or at least posed as one to mislead the victims. A retired Milwaukee detective, Steve Spingola, believes that killings were committed by different killers, though the family members of one of the victims is very suspicious of the detective, claiming that the detective may be trying to cover up. The murders, unfortunately, remain under investigation to this day. Number 5 on the list is Cleveland torso murders. These string of murders happened between 1935 and 1938. There were between 12 and 20 victims. The Cleveland torso murders, also known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, was a Great Depression era serial killer who terrorized Cleveland, Ohio between 1935 and 1938. Out of all the strings of murderers covered today, this killer may be the most gruesome. The killer beheaded and dismembered multiple male and female victims, often dumping their bodies into impoverished Cleveland neighborhood areas known as the Kingsbury Run. The official number of the victims attributed to the Cleveland torso murder is 12, although many researchers suggest that the total body count may be severely high, as of 20 or even 30. This killer preyed upon drifters and the working poor class. As a result, many of the torso murder's victims remain unidentified. The first confirmed case of the torso murderer's victims were discovered on September 23, 1935. There were 2 victims. The first was Edward Asrasri and an unidentified male. Edward's body was found 30-something feet away from the remains of the unidentified male. And to make things even more gruesome, both men were castrated and had their heads missing. The heads were eventually recovered. Unfortunately, more grisly slayings of mutilation followed suit. A number of bodies were discovered long after the killings had occurred, further complicating the efforts to track down or even stop the murderer. Authorities suspected Dr. Francis E. Sweetney of being a potential suspect, but they did not have enough evidence to convict him, so they let him go. Another man, Cleveland's resident Frank DeZalle, was arrested in 1939 as a suspect in slaying of Torso's victim Florence Perillo, only to die under mysterious circumstances while in police custody. In 2010, researchers from Kauai Community College released evidence that cleared DeZalle's name. To this day, Cleveland Torso's murders have remained unsolved. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more awesome videos. Also, be sure to hit the notification bell to be notified when I drop another unsolved or unexplainable video. Until next time, guys, this is the Butler.